Hi! On this episode, we'll be looking to repair several issues with an internal hot water heater. The first issue we will resolve is replacing a faulty mixing valve. The second issue we will resolve is repairing leaky fittings. And we'll show you how much you can save by doing this yourself. Welcome to DIY Well. So whether you're a plumber trying to assist a customer or you're a DIYer trying to fix your internal water heater, this video is likely for you. So if you've determined that you have no hot water, and upon looking at your internal water heater, the front display indicates an E27, this is an indicator that your mixing valve is faulty and needs replacing. The problem with servicing this unit is that the company that originally manufactured this unit is no longer in business, and finding replacement parts can be difficult. Fortunately, Boston Heating Supply, links are below in the description, did manage to buy a few parts that you will need to service your unit, including the mixing valve. One thing to keep in mind is that this unit uses some proprietary O-ring stainless steel fittings that are held together with clips. I strongly encourage you to purchase an O-ring set. I've linked that below in case you damage or find that there are leaks created when you remove these fittings and pressure test your unit. Wear proper safety gear and follow all appropriate precautions, especially when working around water, electricity, and gas. Take my guidance at your own risk. I offer no guarantees. As I take you to the repair in progress, I've woken up to no hot water, and upon investigation, I see that my panel shows E27. There's also a puddle of water underneath my unit, which shows I have a leak. I'll take you through what I did to resolve these issues. Step 1, unplug your internal water heater. Step 2, shut off the gas. In my case, I use propane. Step 3, shut off the water. In my situation, I have a shutoff valve near the hot water heater. The next step is to drain the small tank utilizing the valve on the left-hand side of the unit. Note that you may have to turn counterclockwise quite a bit to get water to flow. Don't forget to close your valve back off, or you may be in for a surprise when you turn the water back on. Remove pressure from your hot water line. I have removed screws from the outside door panel and one screw from the lower left for the inside door for the hot water tank, and I'm beginning to assess the damage. On this repair, I'm going to do some optional things that you will not want to do, or probably won't want to do, if you're just replacing the mixing valve. You're going to see me take out this entire section. I get a leak in this section when the unit is cold. I'm going to replace the O-rings in those fittings. I'll be removing these clips, disconnecting these pipes that have gaskets, unscrewing this fitting on the top. This fitting, I'll unscrew it from the top. You don't need to do this if you're replacing the mixing valve. You'll just need to disconnect this fitting here in order to pull the mixing valve out. The other stuff that I pull out in here, this you will probably want to pull out just because it makes access to the mixing valve much easier. The mixing valve is behind this. It is this little plastic white piece and valve assembly just behind this hose. This is another zoom in of the mixing valve. One of the first things we'll need to do is remove the venting pipe, the flexible pipe from the blower assembly. I've already done that here. You see the brass ring, that's just a screw clamp. And I'm going to now pull this out to move it out of the way. You can't do this repair easily with this in the way. Learn from my mistake and remove the ring clamp down below. It will make pulling the pipe out much easier. You're going to need to disconnect a number of fittings, electrical connections to various sensors to be able to get back to make the repair. So you'll see me periodically disconnect clips. These are fairly dummy proof. They can only go in one spot, so there shouldn't be too much for you to worry about. As always, take thorough pictures before you start disconnecting things. There are really two types of fittings you need to worry about. One are just the typical screw-on fittings. These fittings have a gasket on the inner side to prevent water leakage. My strong recommendation after doing this, and I did not do this at the time, is to buy a gasket set and replace all these gaskets. Some of the gaskets were very worn from being installed for over a decade. I will go back and replace them, but strongly recommend you do this. The other type of fitting that you'll deal with are these ring clips. These are super simple. You'll see these two silver tabs. You just push them apart and it pulls out. It's very easy. All it is meant to do is basically keep the pipes from pulling apart. Inside of these, where this particular clip is used, there is a rubber O-ring on the inside to provide a seal for the water. You'll see that in a little bit. Don't let this confuse you. I moved the camera up, pointing down. At this point, it's a matter of just disconnecting fittings to get back to the mixer valve. So it's just a combination of those simple clips and the screw-on connections with the gasket. And I'm now able to pull off the mixer valve after removing a few pieces. It comes down after you remove a clip, and then you can disconnect the electrical fitting on the bottom. My apologies for blocking the view, but this part is optional. It's only if you're replacing gaskets. This is the leaky spot when the unit is cold. I remove my clips and then determine I need to unscrew this top fitting in order to slide it out. I do realize after I remove the first screw that I need to disconnect the hot water supply first. So I disconnect the hot water supply and then remove the remaining 3 screws.
Hope this isn't a mistake.
With the clip pulled and the screws undone, it's a little bit of just a pull down and pull out, and then you can pull this whole apparatus out. And you see I've got another clip here that I'm going to pull and then separate this assembly so that it's a little bit easier for me to handle. All right, so we're midway through the repair process. So at this point, I've pretty much pulled out the guts of the left-hand side of the internal water heater. Very easy. On a scale of 1 to 10, it was about a 3 in difficulty. So anyone really can do this. So at this point, I have overnighted and received a replacement mixing valve from the Boston Heating Supply Company. Now, there's a link down below for that part. And I have inspected the stainless steel pipe that I pulled out to see if I can determine the source of why it leaks. And so again, this water heater only leaks in this spot when the unit is unplugged. And my guess is with thermal expansion, as soon as the boiler comes on and the water heats up, there's just enough expansion to cause the pipes to seal better. But looking at the water issue first, this is the part that was pulled out of the back left of the unit. And you'll see this is how these pieces actually fit in. So if I take this one piece here, they simply slide in. There you go. They simply slide in, and the gasket on this inner side provides the seal. Now, when you slide these together, there's that metal ring that goes over to keep them clamped. But looking at this, you can see there's some corrosion. Now, I'm going to attempt to clean that up a little bit. This doesn't matter too much. I'm also going to clean the inside fitting inside of the unit a little bit with nothing abrasive because we don't want to scratch it. But I believe this gasket is showing wear, and if you can kind of see it in the video that the gasket is showing some wear, and I believe that's probably enough to allow some water to get by. So in just a moment, I will show you a video of me removing the gasket and replacing it with what I hope will be the correct size so that it will actually fit. If I end up not finding the right gasket, then more than likely this repair is a fail. So the important thing. Here's the old mixing valve. Real big difference between the old mixing valve and the new mixing valve in one real way. If you look down the tube of the long section, you'll see an impeller. If we look at the new mixing valve down the tube, you'll notice no impeller. So when I called the supply company, I asked, is this just a revision? Is the new unit supposed to be this way, or am I supposed to pull this out and put it in there? And they said, oh no, the new unit has been revised. That impeller that you see is the part, this impeller is the part that fails. So Eternal removed that from this. Now you still need to move over this sensor that's on the outside. It's real simple. You just take the screw off, it pulls straight off, there's no glue, and attach it to the other part. Really easy. So we'll put this back on and see how it goes. So here I'm using an O-ring pry tool to remove the O-ring from one of the fittings. You'll notice all these fittings with those little clips have an O-ring inside. I think there's two sizes, but the ones I replaced, I believe, are all 20 mil. But once I took this O-ring out, I simply used my box of mini O-rings, and I'll have a link for these O-ring sets down below. And I just figured out which one matched in circumference and thickness. And I found what I thought was a pretty exact match.
It's pretty close. Yeah, I think that'll work.
So here I'm just applying some silicone lubricant to the O-ring just to make sure it slides on the fitting very easily and hopefully allow it to make a good seal. So I noticed that the fitting I had not pulled out also had an O-ring, so I made the decision to go ahead and disconnect that and replace the O-ring for that fitting as well to hopefully reduce the opportunity for a leak. Once the O-ring was replaced, I refitted the T and then tightened the compression fitting over on the side and began the process to rebuild the unit. I didn't film the steps, but basically you're going to put the parts back in pretty much the same or the reverse order that you took them out. So in this case, I put the fitting for the hot water outlet back in. I put the clips back in. I screwed the fitting back in, and then I reconnected the hot water outlet. And continuing to reverse my steps, I am putting the corrugated pipe back on, and now I am putting my new mixing valve into place. I'm reconnecting the first of two electrical leads. There's one for the sensor and then one for the power for the unit. And I will say that this is a little bit tricky getting it. You need to get the clip on perfect. So when you put the clips come off a lot easier than they go back on. So just make sure that the tubes are fitted together completely. There's no gap like you see right there. And then you can simply slide that ring over it. If you don't get them perfectly together, the ring will not make a proper fit, and then you may end up with a disaster. So pay attention to the ring fitting, double check, make sure they're seated. There's so many of these ring clamps / fittings that I actually end up missing one or two. So obviously keep all your parts in a nice pile. And so if you end up with an extra ring, you know you've missed a fitting somewhere. So at this point, I'm nearing the end, or so I think so. And I'm going to put the ring clamp back on the blower vent pipe. And I just do a nice tug down to make sure that it's fully engaged. You can pull a little bit of the slack down, put the ring over, and tighten it down. Don't over tighten it, just a nice snug fit. At this point, you need to do a leak test, and while I show you that I'm fully engaging the valve, you really should just crack this open slightly, hear the water fill up, and verify there are no leaks anywhere. If there are leaks, immediately shut it off and address the problem. If the leak test is a success, turn the gas back on. If you're a gambler and you think you're lucky, you can go ahead and close the cabinet up. And now we get to see if all our work has been in vain. So I'm plugging up this unit. It will initially show the water temperature of 120. If my repair was not a success, this would error out with some code, probably E27. In this situation, it is not errored out. And what I should see is that red LED show up in the upper left corner of the panel to indicate that the burner is on. Success. So this is a breakdown of our cost. Our total was $292 and 0 on tools, as there were no specialized tools needed. Our parts were silicone grease at $495, an O-ring set at $19.99, the valve at $175.95. I did opt for overnight shipping at a whopping $91.45, so this totaled $292. So let's talk about what this would have cost if a plumber did the work. This is really going to depend on how motivated your plumber is. Most are not going to want to do a repair on a defunct hot water heater manufacturer and likely are going to recommend a replacement. But let's say you've got one of the really good ones. The supplies are going to stay the same, $292. I am expecting one service fee of $120. This is 2 trips. They'll likely charge at least 4 hours of labor at $125 an hour. So that brings us to $625, totaling $917. Conversely, if they recommend a replacement hot water heater, which I think is likely, the supplies are going to be at least $1,200. And in our area, tankless water heaters are being installed for about $1,200 in labor plus parts. So that brings you up to $2,108. So this brings us down to our total DIY savings. This is a range from $625 to $2,108. Our running total across 2 episodes ranges from $1,258 to $2,741. So as you see, doing it yourself definitely can save you big. Until next time, thanks for watching.